And thank you so much, Tim. Cedric, I missed that whole intro. I was still eating breakfast. Who are we watching this round? What's going on?
Unbelievable.
I don't
Well,
really know.
okay. Well, if you're gonna miss it, yeah, tell us what you were eating, man. Let's cut to the chase.
It's so boring. I actually ate it like an hour ago too. So it's just like all lies. I had a piece of toast with an egg on it and a bowl of cereal, and I'm not even kidding. It's like
That's fine. That's good clean
literally
living
the
right
most
there.
boring. Yeah, it was good. I mean, I put some hot sauce on the egg, so
There you go,
kicked my
feeling it.
morning
I
off
mean,
right.
I had a sluggish start with a top pot glazed donut, so
Oh God, Top Pot. Don't even
it's
say
really
that to
good.
me
I
right now.
know, I know.
Don't
It's
do
two
that.
blocks. It's 2 blocks from where I live, man.
I got 1 2 blocks from me too, dude. Like I'll leave right now. All right. So we've got William Huey Jensen versus Reid Duke here lined up in well, I mean, this would be one of the like if you could hand pick feature matches, this would be one of the ones that you would take, I think, just because not only of the high level of play, but also as you mentioned in the intro, there said the relationship between these two people is very strong, and let's see how this thing ends up going between these two. The other thing that's kind of interesting is there's going to be basically full knowledge about how each other plays and also how they approach the matchup. So that could lead to some plays that look a little bit different than normal.
For sure, for sure. When you're talking about two players of this caliber who have tested together, teammates obviously with Team CFB, and have been teammates in so many things over the course of their Magic careers. You might get a little frisky with some of your plays there, and kind of shake it up and try to do some things that might take this person that you know is so good at talking about both these guys and Reid Duke and William Jensen maybe off guard a little bit. Who knows?
Let's see how things go. In the early stages, not a whole lot to speak of just yet. A couple of Thieves Guild enforcers. And interestingly, Reid is going to cast his own copy, perhaps just signaling that he'd like to make a trade here.
Remember, Blood Chief's Thirst is a sorcery, not an instant, and can't imagine you want to use a Drown on the Lock or an Essence Scatter on this, so trade looks good.
Yep, so trade happens. That's going to leave Jensen with the opportunity. Oh, is he going to miss a land drop here potentially?
Certainly going to try not to.
Yeah, okay. So he's going to go ahead and, oh, there it is.
There you go. All right.
He's got the Cling to Dust all ready to go as well. Passes the turn back over to Reid, who draws his card for the turn. And, he was in the same situation at risk of not hitting his fourth land drop, but Reid found that land off the top of the library here.
Pretty interesting hands here for both players. One thing to note is we're not seeing a lot of milling yet. No Soaring Thought Thieves. We've just saw a couple of Thieves Guilds Enforcers trade. And then we've got neither player with Into the Story in hand. So we're playing a much different kind of ball game here right now.
We're playing small ball.
Yeah, we really are.
A couple of little sharks are about to go at it here.
Both players taking a look. I mean, so I know this was mentioned during the last match that Corey Riley just did, but this standard format, I mean, there's an Into the Story too, by the way. But this standard format, I mean, there's just so much to track, especially when you're in a matchup like this. Cards in hand, cards to use to escape something like Cling to Dust, cards in graveyard for Into the Story or for those rogues to get bigger because 7 versus 8. Life total. How many cards do I have in my deck? I mean, there is a lot to pay attention to in these games, and it's exasperated in this matchup for sure.
Absolutely. And it's weird stuff. It's stuff that we're not necessarily used to seeing, like what you're seeing on your screen right now with this Cling to Dust. The cards that Huey exiled were basically meaningless. They weren't cards that Reid was going to be able to get back anyway, but he's able to effectively cycle Cling to Dust both times and empty out his own graveyard.
Yeah. And it's just, like how big of a deal is that Cling to Dust? Well, now there's no cards in the graveyard. Now, let's say there's one because of this Blood Chief's Thirst, but again, like Cling to Dust, making sure that, hey, you're Into the Story. I want that to be something that costs 7 mana for as long as possible. And don't forget too, you get these little Cling to Dust wars.
Love it. Love it. Cling your cling. So Reid's actually going to be the one who ends up with the Cling to Dust in the graveyard, but you could make the argument that the damage is already done as Huey has, emptied out his own yard, at least for now.
If I'm reading this spot, look, I could play Land 6 and Castle Lockbane have it enter the battlefield untapped because of the Zagoth Triumph and say, hey, Shark Typhoon, wham! Try to slam that down, have it resolve. Now we know that Huey has didn't say please enhance, so that wouldn't work. But if that Shark Typhoon resolves, as we saw yesterday, when you and I were covering these Rosemere matchups, that's it.
And we actually saw that a lot too, didn't we?
Yeah.
Said more than I anticipated, at least coming in. Because generally speaking, when you put Shark Typhoon into your list, it's to cycle it, and a very small percentage of the time do you actually get to just cast it, put it on the stack, and have it on the battlefield. But we saw a lot of games end from that. I mean, look at the typical hand here from Jensen, right? Like imagine if he had a Shark Typhoon, like every single card in his hand would be making sharks. And so that's one of those things that, when your deck is built in this way where it's heavily instant based, you only have a few creatures and, everything triggers it. Getting one of those things on the battlefield is massive.
I mean, two things to note too. Over the past couple of turns here, one, I don't know if you caught it, but Jensen activated Castle Lockbane. So yeah, so
it's the thing to do.
We saw Hayne do that twice and take a total of 13 damage for 2 new cards. Jensen took 6 on his activation. Reid has not activated one of his yet. And then also, you mentioned Shark Typhoon. Well, Huey's got 2 more copies in hand right now, and I'm not sure what the best spot is to try to maneuver this thing onto the battlefield, but he's just going to wait it out, and so now we've got this kind of waiting game between these two players.
This is really interesting now because now both players have really stocked up hands. I mean, they have 6 to 7 spells each in hand. As we see Jensen go for Shark Typhoon, cycled here on Reid's end step for a huge 6/6 Shark, which is going to demand an answer of some sort.
Yeah, there is one.
Can't just let it sit on the battlefield, and that's just a big win for Huey Jensen, right? He gets the card out of it, and he demands that Reid answers his threat.
Yeah, we're going to keep the Shark Typhoons rolling. Going to scry that one on top of the Temple of Deceit. Like that, again, you got to remember, in the deck building process, players made the decision between, do I want to play Duress as my companion, or do I want to play Shark Typhoon? And there's other deck building considerations with the 1s and the 2s as the removal and the counterspells and crab versus no crab, whatever. But just that decision of Duress versus Shark Typhoon, I don't know about you, but I've been really impressed with Shark Typhoon as opposed to Duress, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise because we know that Shark Typhoon's a really powerful card.
Yeah, I have too. I'm with you on that one. Said it's been a different look, right? You'll see these explosive turns from the rogues with Duress, where they get to bring back a rogue in the same turn, and then sort of again demand an answer for Duress, and then the rogue that you brought back, and it ends up being more of a mill plan, where here you can switch fairly easily to a pure control role where rogues need not apply. And that's kind of what we've seen here, right? We've seen a few Thieves Guild Enforcers, and otherwise rogues haven't had anything to do with anything here. This is just 2 blue-black control decks going at it.
Yeah. At least for right now. And we just saw an Into the Story get countered by Didn't Say Please. Reid had the decision there of using Didn't Say Please versus a negate, decided to go with the more expensive counterspell. So that's worth noting. Reid does still have a negate in the holster. And because these 2 players are playing the exact same main deck, Huey knows that Reid has access to just 1 main deck copy of negate and vice versa. Oh yeah, let's ram jam.
All right, Huey's going for it. He's got the double counterspell backup. Yeah, 2 Drown in the Lock available to protect Shark Typhoon. And he says, this is my big move. Of note here, these players cannot deal with Shark Typhoon once it's on the battlefield outside of 1 card between both of them. And that's in the 75. It's not even in the main deck. And that is the one Brazen Borrower that, was it Huey or Reid that has it?
Huey's got the Brazen Borrower.
So there you go. And it's in the sideboard, so it's not even relevant here. So this Shark Typhoon this is the big move of the game, right? This is the time when, if this thing ends up on the battlefield and Reid can't immediately strike back with something massive of his own, then Huey can run away with this game. And we see him burning a Drown in the Lock here. Ooh, barely enough from Reid's perspective, I think. On this side, of course, it's plenty. There's 6 cards in the yard there for Reid. Huey only needed to have 2.
And so what's keep going. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's kind of interesting because when the dust does settle on this, if Jensen is tapped out, look over at Reid's hand. He's got his own Shark Typhoon. You could see both of them.
Yeah, you beat me to it. We might work ourselves into like this weird Shark Typhoon-esque game. And what's kind of interesting right now is so Reid is really in the tank here. I think a lot of people would have probably fired off that negate by now and said like, whoa, 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 what are we even doing here? Like, you negate back and you hope it's good. And we're seeing Reid take what is clearly a different approach. He's gonna escape Kling, and I think escaping Kling is gonna force action here from Huey.
It is because it's going to make his Drown in the Lock not counter the other.
Do anything.
That was a sweet play by Reid Duke. He empty out his graveyard in response, and he blanks Drown in the Lock. And Huey looks down at another copy of it. That means that Reid's Drown in the Lock actually works.
Yeah, so that's pretty sick. Instead of fighting back with that negate, Reid took a different line, found a better approach, made that Drown the Lock bad, which made the other copy of Drown the Lock in Jensen's hand bad. And now Reid has the opportunity to really flex his muscles on this game. We might see him go to his own Typhoon, knowing that, hey, if you have your one negate, you would have cast it.
Oh, man. So Reid knows that the way is clear. Like you said, negate would have come out of the holster there for Jensen, and Reid knows it. So he knows I'm going to resolve my Shark Typhoon. And with what started out as Huey Jensen saying, all right, I'm going to cast the first shot. I've got a good safe position here to do this, or at least relatively so, completely backfires. And now it's Reid Duke with the Shark Typhoon, and he's going to run rampant on this board.
Yeah, this should be a runaway now for Reid. Jensen's hand is kind of just is what it is. But when there's a resolved Shark Typhoon on the battlefield, there's no way you get it off. Reid's got plenty of spells in hand. End to the story, and we've mentioned this before. Even if it gets countered, you still get a gigantic shark. This is exactly where Duke wants to be.
I'm so jealous right now, Sid. Like, I'm trying to decide if I'm more jealous of Reid or more jealous when you said that you got Top Hot Donuts today, but it's Reid Duke who picks up game number 1. It really did play out like a traditional control mirror. It was all about hitting land drops and then picking the right time to go for a fight, and a super clever play there by Reid Duke to empty out his graveyard and end up bricking, as it turns out, not only the Drown in the Lock on the stack, but the one in hand for William Jensen. Real blowout, and somehow, even though of course, it was Shark Typhoon that ultimately would get the job done there for Reid, I have to say, winning the early Cling to Dust war is what ended up being the most important thing.
And that's why you're seeing so many copies of that card main deck. It looks weird, right? Like, obviously, that card has some functionality, but it's not as straightforward as something that says, like, counter target spell, or this is my win condition, or something like that. And it's the kind of card that I think a lot of people look at in Cling to Dust and say, well, I'll play one. Like, the first one's kind of free, so it's kind of in there. But, like, no, this card is an integral card to the mirror match here. And if you're assuming that Dimir Rogue is going to be popular, which obviously a lot of players are, and these two players definitely were, multiple copies of Cling to Dust makes sense. And don't forget, too, Marshall, as you take a look at the sideboards, there's 2 more in their sideboards. That means they can board up to 4 copies of that card.
Lovely. We're going to see a quick mulligan here from Jensen, it looks like.
His hand doesn't look great either.
No, this is a real stinker. Those into the stories just miles and miles away. Ugh, and a heartless act.
Yeah, his hand's just completely reactive. He's looking for rogues right now to do some milling, stuff like that. Reid kept a pretty clean 7, all things considered. Got enough lands to kind of operate Soaring Thought Thief as well, even though Jensen does have an answer. So, I'm looking at things just right now as they're currently shaping up. I like Duke's hand much more than I like Jensen's, but a few draw steps could change plenty of things over the course of this game.
There's a Soaring Thought Thief. It's cast on the main phase because it's really interesting. Sometimes you have to make the decision between waiting until your opponent's turn or casting it on your turn. So even the simplest thing with this Rogues deck is fascinating. Yeah, and now, once again, we see a main phase instant here from William Huey Jensen.
We do see this sort of thing happen sometimes where, everyone looks at this matchup as there's another horrible end of the story. We do see this thing sometimes, right, where, oh, this is a flash deck, so both players just don't do anything, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm doing something on my main phase, and so am I. And then all of a sudden we become like this really weird main phase battle, and then it might matriculate back to, no, we're doing the flash thing again. So you got to be willing to adapt.
I got to tell you what, if I'm William Huey Jensen, I don't really want to go into this story at all. This is brutal. He's got 7, 14, 21 mana worth of card draw in his hand right now.
You got to get some. I mean, got to find a way to get some cards in the graveyard. Obviously, he has no way of doing so right now. But it's weird in matchups like this too, Marshall, because you're saying to yourself, well, I mean, it's just a 1/1 shark, got a lot of life to work with, stuff like that. But the pressure mounts in different ways in matchups like this. It's not so much about the battlefield; it's about the quality of each player's hand. And right now, Reid's hand is significantly better than Jensen's.
All right. Well, let's see how this goes from here. I mean, perhaps there's a world where Jensen ends up getting some cards into the graveyard for Reid and then can overpower. It is interesting when you see Into the Story resolve like twice in a game. I mean, that's tough to beat, right? This does become a resource fight. Usually these decks have a hard time applying direct pressure to the life total to punish. The question is, can he resolve them or keep himself alive in the meantime? So far, yeah. I mean, he's faced down a grand total of 1 power. Reid has had a very reactive hand as well. And maybe this actually gets interesting having triple Into the Story go into the late game.
Yeah, and one thing that's also worth noting, too, is Reid's going to fire off a Cling of Dust here, and looks like remove his own Shark Typhoon, is that, it might seem like a little strange, but Reid's not attacking with his 1/1 Shark. He's had it on the battlefield for a couple of turns. He's not sending it in, and now he's finally sending it in. So I was a little curious about that. He had the opportunity, I think, to attack a couple of times there and was electing not to unless I missed something. So, I mean, every decision that players of this skill and this caliber and with these resumes are making, they are not accidental.
Looks like Jensen's content to just keep on taking hits here. He's not even going to run out the Soaring Thought Thief just yet.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting spot here, too, because Jensen does have 7 mana, and Duress is an enormous, enormous draw. Duress is so beautiful as a card because it's the card in a matchup like this that just says, hey, I'm cheap, and I want to know what the heck is going on over there.
Right. Boy, and the super understated side of Duress is the look at your opponent's hand, right?
Yes.
Like Reid Duke gets to know every card you have. It's like very, very powerful. And we talk about it sometimes because it often gets overlooked, but especially players of this caliber, you give them that much information and it gets kind of ugly for you kind of quickly. Drown in the Loch, though, does end up countering it. Reid says, sure, that's fine. And Huey even finds a replacement Drown.
Now, what's kind of interesting to me in this spot is that we're going to see another Cling to Dust is when is Jensen going to let these Into the Stories rip? Because if I'm Duke, my opponent's doing nothing, like legitimately flat nothing, and I'm trying to parse what's in their hand. Now, I would have been able to find out if that Duress resolved, but that didn't happen. So if I'm trying to guess what's going on in my opponent's hand, it's like, okay, well, there's probably at least 1 Into the Story. I don't know if I'm willing to guess 2 Into the Story because it's very likely that, okay, Jensen's probably got some amount of counter magic because I haven't played anything relevant worth countering. And then it's like, okay, he's probably got at least 1 removal spell, but this shark isn't worth killing. So you're trying to parse what's going on in your opponent's hand right now. And it's like, okay, here's the first Into the Story. Do I know what those other 6 cards are? Not exactly, but I've kind of got a little bit of a feel for it. Didn't say please, going to do some milling too. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And there's 1 Into the Story down. Yep, I'm curious to see if Jensen just starts running them out turn after turn. Oh, but there's another Duress that's going to earn perhaps another copy of Drown in the Loch.
And you see how good Duress is. If this resolves, you mentioned, Marshall, the information aspect of things. I'm gonna harp on the fact that a card would get taken, and I believe that Jensen has 7 cards in his graveyard. So if a card gets taken or a card gets cast, that's card 8 in the graveyard. If I've got my math right, which means Into the Story. Well, excuse me, it'll be card 7. So that means Into the Story should be on the cheap now, I believe. Yes, just saw the casting cost tick down. That 5 went to a 2. So now Into the Story is going to cost 4.
That could be huge here, right? Yeah. If Reid is the first one who's able to resolve an Into the Story, okay, there's a Shark Typhoon. I mean, the hand is very powerful here for Jensen, and he has not been punished for his lack of action thus far. To me, it really does come down to who's going to be able to get one of these Into the Stories resolved.
well, I think this is the card that we're going to fight over here. And the difficult part, well, I take that back. Jensen says, you know what, you can have it. Well, excuse me. I thought that might be the one that we saw a little bit of a battle over, and Jensen would have lost that battle. And the reason for that is twofold. One, you've got Duke here, who's got negate and didn't say please if they're ready. But two, Duke's got the mana advantage. Jensen's been kind of I don't want to say messing around, but he's been missing land drops where Duke has been hitting land drops, and Temples have been bridging the gap with the scries and everything else. So not only does Duke have more cards, but he's got more mana, and that means he can do more things in one turn.
Can see Jensen thinking what to do on Reid's end step here, perhaps tempted just to fire off another end of the story. Very difficult now facing down all those cards. In fact, I believe there's 8 cards in hand for Reid at this point.
Well, there are worse places to start.
Yes. So cycled Shark Typhoon. This one would be for 6.
I think Huey's smart enough to know that, like, this isn't good, but there are worse places to start. I don't think he had any expectation of his Shark staying on the battlefield and being relevant over the course of this game. But, new card coming. Let's get through that stage of the game, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think Reid, there's some way where that's actually a good thing for him, because he gets to use a removal spell that he needed to use anyway in that spot and doesn't have to discard to hand size now.
Yep.
I mean, it's a small victory, right? He could have just discarded a land or something, but every land counts in these matchups, as we've seen.
I mean, I know these are Dimir Rogue's decks, and we are not really seeing the Rogues aspect of things show up at all. But yeah, I mean, as far as a traditional control mirror is concerned, hitting all those land drops is very, very important.
This really is getting very difficult now for William Huey Jensen. As you see him play his land past the turn, and now Reid is firing off on all cylinders here. He resolves another into the story.
Yeah. We got Klings going back and forth now, too. This Dimir Rogue's deck, man, this is a really good deck.
This is a sweet, sweet deck, especially its ability to kind of switch gears, right? Like, we've seen where on-board stuff was the most important thing as the players were able to commit cheap, reliable threats early in the game, but not in this matchup. Between these two players, this is played very much like a blue-black control deck versus another blue-black control deck, and it does have the ability to kind of change gears.
It does, and that's what makes this deck so powerful. Again, you got to remember, when we were going through Zendikar Rising preview season, we were seeing cards like Nighthawk Scavenger, Xerath Sand, Brazen Borrower was already a rogue. I mean, everyone's looking at this like, oh man, we got little blue-black tribal beatdowns. Well, not so much.
Not so much.
This deck still can kill pretty quickly between Shark Typhoon, Thieves Guild Enforcer, those turning into 4/2s or 5-power creatures, Soaring Thought Thief in the air. Like, it can do a lot of different things throughout its 75. That's what makes it so appealing.
You can see Reid just has an embarrassment of a hand here. So many extra cards. He's going to have to just fire off a bunch of stuff to not have to discard here. And I'm curious. Oh, I was just going to say, I'm curious if he's going to make a big move. And he is. It is Shark Typhoon. He's looking to leverage the card advantage that he's gained, but also the mana advantage that you mentioned a minute ago, said. And he's just put Shark Typhoon on the stack. He has plenty of mana left over to protect it as well.
Yeah, and that's the big deal here, is because he does have that mana advantage. As you mentioned, Marshall, he's got plenty of mana to protect this and he's got the spells to do it too. 2 copies of Negate, two Drown the Locks too. So didn't say please is going to be Huey's attempt to stop this, and that will only happen if Reid wants it to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Reid may just go for the full fight here and just try to get this Shark Typhoon down. There's really only one card that matters, and even that doesn't matter so much, which is that the Brazen Borrower that we talked about before. Not in hand for Jensen, and even then, at best, a temporary solution to the problem, because you still need to be able to counter it on the way back down, and they're going to have a good old-fashioned counter fight here.
Yeah, and Jensen has to make his move here. He is incentivized right now. We saw what Shark Typhoon looked like when it resolved in the last game, which means that the game ended very, very quickly. So we get this little bit of a battle, and there's that negate.
There's that negate, and that will ensure that the Shark Typhoon's going to resolve here for Reid. A massive swing in his direction. He's already picked up game number one.
Looks like he might get a Soaring Thought Thief in response to the Shark Typhoon. You want to play this in response to the Shark Typhoon because if you let the Shark Typhoon resolve and then you play the Soaring Thought Thief, if Reid decides to counter this, then there would be a Shark token. Here's Duress from Jensen. You're a little late. I'm already torn.
Wow. Yeah, that Duress last turn would have changed the entire way that this game played out, as it would have forced Reid to counter it and taken away perhaps a negate or something like that. As it stands, look at that absurd hand from Reid. Double drown in the lock with didn't say please as backup. And he's sitting there with a Shark Typhoon on the battlefield right now. He is all ready to go.
Yeah, and we saw the early stages of the game, those Duresses that Reid drew. He drew two to Jensen zero. Jensen finally drawing his first one. And think about what Jensen had to do around those Duresses, Marshall. It was drown the lock one. I think it was drown the lock both.
It was.
And drown the lock is such a key card in this deck and in this matchup. But that's how powerful Duress is. That information, taking of a card, figuring out how you're going to play the subsequent turns because of that. It just showed up a little late here for Jensen, but Jensen's trying to fight back into this with a copy of Into the Story.
He's going to need both of them and a lot more. I think those are all going to have to resolve. He's going to need to hit well off of them. It's just going to be so difficult for him to come back through this Shark Typhoon on the battlefield, because remember, whenever these players have any of these type of fights, it's going to be Reid who wins it regardless of what happens, because he's just going to generate a huge board advantage turn after turn. It looks like Jensen's going to go for the other end of the story here.
Yeah, I think I like the idea here by Jensen of trying to resolve the other end of the story. Basically putting all your shields down. You're going to take 3 from the attack and fall down to 10. And it's like, okay, let's gas back up and let's hope that Reid's hand isn't that good. Now, Jensen does know the hand. Multiple copies around the lock, couple lands, stuff like that. But in a spot like this, where you got to get a little lucky, you gotta maximize your opportunity to get lucky. So maybe Reid bricks off a couple of times and you can work through those copies of Drown the Lock. I think it's unlikely, especially with multiple copies of Cling to Dust, and I'm going to stop talking because a Shark Typhoon was drawn. So I'm all set. I'm just all good.
That's exactly what Reid's saying to himself right now, getting the day started off right here. I don't know how he did in the last round, but he's 4-3 right now. He's playing against one of the toughest players in the field, his good friend, William Huey Jensen. And, he's stomping him right now. And LOL, there's the Brazen Borrower.
Right on time.
A little late, my friend.
Not always there when you call, but always on time.
Oh, so close, but yet so far for that Brazen Borrower and William Huey Jensen, staring down an Air Force of a 6/6, a 2/2, and a 1/1, and it is not getting smaller from here. Reid can just simply sit back on his counters. Now, interestingly, you see Jensen go into big brain mode here. Now, what he's doing is he fully understands that he's in an absolutely terrible position. So he is now trying to figure out what the possible lines are that could work if you make assumptions that are extremely favorable to you. Like maybe Reid has 4 lands in hand rather than any spells, something like that. Now, as you can see, he knows at least 3 of those. I don't know if he knows about that last round in the lock. So he's going to have to factor that into his decision as well and try to come up with a way, even if it's desperate, that could work. And he'll do that now. Of course, he knows that the chances of it actually working are slim to none, and he needs to work through to see what gives him the biggest end of that slim end of the percentages.
And look, you gotta try to hit your 1%er, and that's really what it feels like it is. But look, it's worth trying to figure out. He's got 3 timeouts to work through, and he's got cards in his hand that matter. And is the likelihood of Jensen winning this game low? Yeah, it is. But there's a reason that he is a Hall of Famer, Pro Tour champion, world champion, and everything else that's on his resume is that if anybody can figure it out in this situation, which looks incredibly dire, it is him.
Air Force in there. Yep,
Yep.
everybody's in. This would put Huey down to just 1 life. So now what? This is Reid's end step. Big Shark got hit. So down to 7 goes Jensen.
I'm gonna do a little clinging.
Yep. But it looks like Jensen has enough cards that that Reid can still fire off into the story in response if he'd like, and that's what's going to happen. So 14-14 versus flying power and toughness on the battlefield. And by the way, maybe draw 4. At that point, you don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can just say, sure, counter it all you want. And by the way, it didn't get countered. So that has to be the death knell here for Jensen. I mean, it was looking like that was the case before, but now 4 extra cards in hand and the 2/7/7 sharks, that just seems like too much to overcome here for Jensen.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think the plan there with Jensen is, I'm going to let the story resolve because I can't fight over everything. I have to be selective in what the battles are going to be about because I don't have the opportunity to have that many battles moving forward. So my hope is that you draw 4 lands or 4 irrelevant cards. And as we saw with the Duress, the Typhoon, and the Mystical Dispute that were drawn, I would not call those irrelevant. I guess the only thing to think about here is just like how many cards does how many cards does Duke have in his library? I
Right. Is there a
guess.
potential mill plan? Yeah. Uh, right now, just the Soaring Thought Thief here for Jensen in hand. It doesn't seem like he would have the ability to combat the board here and also apply pressure to the library size of Reid in a timely fashion, but
I am just. I guess I'm not surprised that he isn't conceding in Huey, but clearly he's got something like brewing upstairs
oh, he definitely does.
of like
I don't know what it
it's.
is.
I don't know what it is either, and that's actually like really kind of compelling to me because it's like, all right, like he's still playing. He's extremely far behind, and Reed's hand is really good,
Right.
but we are still battling.
What is Jensen's game plan? And you know that Reid's thinking the same thing, right? Why are we still playing this game? Right? How is
I
this
have two
still
shark
happening?
typhoons.
Right. I have 2 Shark Typhoons. I have what, 14, 17 power on the board. Make it 21.
Boy, I mean, now I just want to see Huey win.
I do too. I'm just curious to see.
I just want to see him win.
Right. Because we're going to see into the story go on the stack here. This could be the last strike here for Jensen. He has the ability to deal with some of these sharks. He has Brazen Borrower to bounce one, and he has Heartless Act to kill another one. He could even block with a Soaring Thought Thief if necessary. Well, it looks like the uh, the end of the story is going to resolve.
Yeah. Oh, well, no better way to clear a path than a duress. I'll tell you what.
I wonder if that's going to do it.
It's the ultimate. What the heck is going on?
Right.
Card.
So we're going to see Heartless Act kill a 7/7.
Yeah, we're gonna try. I think this one's worth fighting over. You're also gonna get 2/2/2s for your trouble.
Yeah, regardless of whether Drown, and it looks like Drown will not actually do anything here thanks to Cling to Dust. But oh no, I spoke too soon. It looks like there's. Oh no, wait, that's Reid's graveyard.
That's how Reid's graveyard, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll be able to take all but one.
Wow, the fact that Cling to Dust can trump Drown is like outrageous.
It is fantastic. You have to keep clinging, and you can't let your cling get clung. But if you do, then yeah, it actually works.
Yeah, this because normally when you play a game like this, right? Like you've got this overwhelming advantage, and you just show your opponent. Like if you show your opponent your hand, you say, "Yeah, I got 2 drowns, so we're done." And it's like, well, those drowns are bad because I'm cleaning my graveyard, so that means that you have no hard counters actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
by the way, he's also targeting his own card with Cling, so he gets an additional card out of the yard.
All right, so.
But I mean, how is he supposed to deal with the board, right? That's a real issue that we're facing here. Is that Reid could almost just say 2 mana spell. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that because I get 4 power worth of flyers, and I'm just going to overwhelm you. Yeah, it's just too much.
Yeah, he tried.
Jensen's going to smile and say, all right, buddy, you got it. And that's Reid Duke picking up the victory there, 2-0 over his good friend William Huey Jensen. So another solid win there for Reid. Of course, a difficult matchup for him, both in the sense that it's a skill-intensive and highly interesting matchup between the two players, but also that he happened to be facing down one of the best players in the world there, Said.
Yeah, for sure. Really, really, really good stuff, Marshall.
Yeah, really great stuff. And we've got a lot more to bring you over the course of the day. We're watching the MPL duke it out for their league play. We're going to be watching MPL members fight all day long. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more action. Don't go anywhere.
Hello and welcome to The Bolt, your rapid-fire introduction to the most exciting players in Magic. And right now I've got Canister on the line. Canister, how you doing?
Pretty well.
Good. We'll get straight into some questions. What is the best color of mana?
Colorless. But that's not a color, but KCI produces it.
Do you have a favorite format?
Yes, modern.
Do you have a card that you really hate to see across the table from you?
I get really annoyed by Karn the Great Creator, as it's a card that does a regular thing, but also has a 10% chance to be an absolute killer for your deck if your archetype just happens to be artifact-based.
Oh, yeah, fair.
So that would be it.
Do you have a favorite color combination?
Blue-green, because it's strong.
Yeah. What do you prefer, aggro or control?
Control, but somewhat like not as hardcore win-conless control as many would prefer.
Is there another player in MPL or Rivals that you think is kind of like your rival in the league, someone you want to beat?
Yes, it's Andrea Mengucci. One day I'm gonna bash him.
Is he the kind of the player who just always gets you?
Not really, but he got me that one time in the finals of the Mythic Invitational last year, and
you got to get revenge.
Ever since that, I'm dead set on taking my revenge.
I'll ask you some non-Magic questions. Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
I don't think so. I would typically not expect to ask for a sandwich in a store or a restaurant and get a hot dog.
What's the country with the best food?
Not Poland.
One last question for you. Where can we find you online?
Twitter.com/canister_mtg, Twitch.tv/canister_mtg, YouTube.com/canister.
Awesome.
Not MTG.
Hello and welcome back, my friends. Tim Willoughby here, bringing you information about the next match we're going to get a chance to check out now. We've kind of seemed to have settled into there being 2 different flavors of rogues. You've got your more control-ish shark-flavored rogues, and then you've got your slightly millier crab-flavored rogues. That's what we're going to get a chance to jump across and see here in the hands of Li Shi Qian from Hong Kong. He is up against Chris Kvartek, and we're not going to focus too much on Li Shichan's deck here because we've seen quite a few of this sort of stripe of rogues at the moment. The important thing being Lurrus of the Dream Den alongside that Ruin Crab, meaning that you can quite conceivably go for the milling option very aggressively if you so choose, if your draw lines up. But on the other side of things, Kvartek is on Azorius Blink. Now, this list, we've seen a few different variations on 80 cards because you have got that Yorion in the sideboard as a companion in addition to those 3 in the main deck. Dream Trawlers ahoy! We have got your Elspeth Conquers Deaths and Apparitions as one might expect. This is one of those lists that was pioneered by Jean-Emmanuel Deprat online, and we've seen a lot of people adopting it, but it almost feels like the metagame might have just twisted just a little bit. That means that these Dimir Rogues have got their number. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Our players are ready in the virtual feature match area and actually, given the length of time that we've had on our main match at the moment, we're going to jump into this one partway through. So we're going to be jumping in for game 2 here between Li Shichan and Chris Kvartek.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome back here. Marshall and Cedric with you. And so we've got Chris Kvartek versus Li Shichan. Coming into game number 2, Chris down a game with the Yorion Blink deck here. And also, at that 2-5 record here, not a disaster, but definitely teetering on the edge of, okay, this didn't work out super well for me. Because it's funny, Cedric, because normally we think in terms of top 8, right? And when you know that you can no longer top 8, the whole vibe of your tournament changes to something different. Maybe I could cash, maybe I could pick up some points or whatever. But here, that's not the case. There's kind of distinct groupings at the end of these things where the top group gets to basically go up, the middle group has to fight it out, and the bottom group goes bye-bye. And so every single match is going to be very, very important, particularly for the players like Chris here who are kind of hanging on.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to note. I think you've outlined that pretty well, which is, once things don't go according to plan, right? Once you're out of top 8 contention or an undefeated record or anything like that, how do you adjust mentally? Now, Kvartek's record 2-5, he even posted on Twitter. He's like, I did not have a good day yesterday. Things did not go well for me. But today's a new day, and there's still plenty of work to be accomplished here. So down a game right now against Li Shichan, and what I don't know if Chris feels this matchup is easy, hard, somewhere in between, but he's got work to do, and he's a player who we have seen kind of come back from positions like this in the past. So we'll see how this game unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, my assumption based on the talking to the pros and stuff beforehand is that Kvartek will be unhappy with the matchup, at least at its face level of being a Yorion plus, a Yorion against Dimir Rogues. A lot of the Dimir Rogues decks were in fact aimed at the Yorion decks and particularly have a good matchup there. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that Chris didn't make some changes to the deck anticipating that and perhaps, didn't bring just a stock Yorion deck here.
I was a little surprised to see him keep Shatter the Sky on top with the Omen of the Sea Scry, but felt like that card is good enough in this matchup to not only keep in, but actually actively want in a sideboard game. So Glass Castle's going to take care of that creature, but having Shatter in the holster and now drawing towards a Shark Typhoon, there's a lot to like about this draw.
Here goes Mazemind Tome doing its thing. Cards proven very powerful. In fact, seen play in multiple formats, not just standard.
We got a follower in the house, Yoshi.
Following Kvartek, right?
All right. What's good, Yoshi?
Oh, man. TikTok says the Mazemind Tome. That's the second counter that it's picked up and the second card.
That is one of my favorite new cards in Mazemind's Tome. It's going to see play for a very, very long time. Really well-designed, interesting card. I'm glad it exists.
Same. Yeah, very, very cool card. The ability to accrue card advantage off of it. And then the interesting twist of the life gain at the end makes it more relevant in more matchups where the life gain, if relevant, can be a big difference. So Soaring Thought Thief's going to start doing its thing. This is an 80 card deck in the hands of Kvartek, though. It's going to have to you're gonna have to see a lot more work out of that Soaring Thought Thief than just chipping away for a few attacks here or there. And Li Shitian did run it into a Shark Typhoon here.
Well, Shark's a little hungry.
Yeah, it's a little awkward.
Gonna
have to use a Drown in the lock if he wants to keep that Soaring Thought Thief alive. And that's one of his best cards. He's going to fire it off.
There's a Drown in the lock now. So, yep, you called it. Gonna have to use it to keep the Soaring Thought Thief alive, and we'll see if it ends up being worth it. Kvartek also, you see, he kept up a Temple of Enlightenment. Could have cycled the Shark for 4. Obviously, 3 versus 4 when you're facing a Soaring Thought Thief is irrelevant. So the fact that Mystical Dispute was still up is a good thing.
You can see the game plan here for Li Shitian. He's got 2 copies of Into the Story in hand. So he's willing to keep attacking with the Soaring Thought Thief just to try to get those down to the cheat mode where he can resolve 1 or 2 of them. Then if he can, he may be able to overwhelm Chris Kvartek in the late game. As it stands now, though, the Soaring Thought Thief's really the only way he's getting cards into the graveyard here for Kvartek, and he still has 1 more card to get in the yard in order to get those Into the Stories down to just 4 mana.
Interesting game unfolding here. I mean, we're settle in there, partner.
I just did, buddy. I just went from sitting up mode to all right. Let's test the backrest on this chair a little bit and get settled in.
We're gonna be here for a little bit since we are glimpsing of freedoming to a little the new version of Think Twice. I guess we're gonna be here for a little while.
Yeah, and that's a real key here because that throws a big wrench in the works here for Li Shitian because Li has really been trying to protect the Soaring Thought Thief in order to get the Into the Stories down to 4 mana. And now Chris Kvartek is just churning away his graveyard thanks to Glimpse of Freedom and making life very difficult here for Li. Li has to really face the possibility that he may have to pay full price for Into the Stories down the line. And that's a tough sell. That opens the door for Kvartek to resolve something huge. It means that, counterspells like Mystical Dispute come into play. Yeah. It's a real problem for Li Shitian, and he's going to have a hard time getting it there. So they're going to do the escape fight here. Cling to Dust is going to hit the Glimpse of Freedom. How is this what we're seeing here, Cedric? It's like,
I love that this is what we're seeing. This is the thing. Right. So, the previous critiques about the standard format aside, now that we've had to ban some cards to get to this place, now that we're here, I mean, this is what people are looking for in a standard format. These little small micro interactions of, I'm going to Cling to Dust your Glimpse into, wait, you're playing Glimpse into who's and what's it's? Yeah, right. That's what I'm doing, and it's good, and everything else. Like, I am digging this kind of interaction in a standard format.
I am too. I kind of miss these little tiny, smaller, I don't know, when you think, okay, I'm going to go cover standard this weekend, it's like, oh, okay, there's going to be like, Genesis Ultimatums and Yorions and, just these ridiculous, powerful cards that we get in standard these days. And you don't often think that it's going to come down to like, I'm going to cast Cling to Dust targeting your Glimpse of Freedom. What? Like, you have to look up one of those cards. Like, it's just one of those funny little interactions that you don't expect.
Love it.
In the meantime, we do see a pretty dang decent board getting built out here by Li Shitian, and finally he's able to get enough cards in the yard of Kvartek to fire off at least one of these Into the Stories on the cheap.
Yeah, Kvartek putting the shields down there by casting the Omen of the Sea, so Li Shitian plays a Soaring Thought Thief and then an Into the Story, but he also says, oops.
I wonder what he missed here. I mean, he's going to get his board swept away, right?
That's true.
But that can't be what he was oopsing about, right?
He's clearly not happy about something.
Yeah, I saw him slap his face too, kind of do the wake up, wake up.
All right, well, so Battlefield down. Yeah, I mean, this was when I was talking about that shatter that Kvartek kept very early on with the Scry. getting some value there and into the story resolving. And I mean, you can't be unhappy about it in the story resolving, but there's something there about Lee and his calculations that he was not pleased with.
Perhaps, one thing that it could be. So one thing is Scry is, of course, a lot worse against these mill decks, right? Where you can allow your opponent to scry two good cards to the top, and then you just flash in the thing and mill them so that they don't get access to those cards. Perhaps there was a timing thing there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess, you let Omen of the Sea resolves, if Kavartek says, I'll scry both to the top, right? He draws a card and there's one on top, and then you can play Soaring Thought Thief, mill a card, mill the other card, and then into the story. So maybe that's the thing that Lee is upset about.
It's just such a, not that it's not, everything counts, but I don't know if I would actually do the oops emote for that one. I also don't know if Kavartek did both to the top, because that's the only scenario where that's relevant. It's pretty narrow. Are we going to see? Oh, he's just going to play Amirius Call. Sad.
You wanted some angels.
That's the land. I wanted angels, yeah.
Well, you're going to get a big bird instead.
All right, I'll settle for big bird. Is there anything that Lee can do? Oh, he did have a drown and a lock hiding there, but there's a negate to protect. I believe there's a negate to fight back, and I think we could see Mystical Dispute be a big all-star here. Mm-hmm. Look at that. Chris Kavartek easily able to win this counterfight. He has another Mystical Dispute as backup, so across the finish line with ease, and that means that Yorion, the big bird's going to hit the battlefield and do some serious blinking here.
Yeah, we are going to get all of it out and then all of it back in. I got a casket there. Apparition there. Take a counterspell, neutralize, and now we do this again. I mean, this is a nice little turn.
Hello. Get that Amirius Call in hand. We might actually see that thing cast before long.
Yep.
So a good turn there for Kavartek, able to basically tread water, but reload his hand as well as take care of anything on the other side of the battlefield, basically permanently. But Lee is going to fight back. He has another copy of Into the Story, and if he can find what he needs with this, he could be right back in this.
Kavartek, I think, is actually thinking about disputing this to make it so that Into the Story actually costs 7. And yes, Lee can pay, but now the shields are, we'll call the shields down now. And what I like about this, even though Lee does play a land, is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. So if Kavartek draws a land, he can play Amirius Call with neutralize backup.
Okay, untapped land for Kavartek would let him fire off Amirius Call, which does seem like a pretty big problem for Li Shitian. I mean, that being said, when a player just drew 4 extra cards, you do start to look at scenarios where Lee could just overpower a card like Amirius Call. Like, you don't normally think of it like, okay, well, I'll just kill both angels, right? Like that is a good outcome for Chris Kavartek, but with the amount of card advantage that Lee's been able to accrue over the course of the game, he may be able to just do that.
Yeah, and this actually may not be that difficult for him to accomplish, as you did mention. So, the Yorion dying there is a bit of a bummer there for Kavartek. Lee taking care of that on the main phase while the shields were down. Amirius Call does generate those 2 angels, and Skyclave Apparition, at least for right now, is indestructible. But, I mean, it's not impossible for Li Shiqian to be able to beat these 2 4/4s, and Luris is certainly a step towards doing that.
Yeah, Luris, of course, has the ability to let Lee cast, say, Soaring Thought Thief just to block that type of thing can happen. He can do that repeatedly. Though it does feel like getting at least one of these angels off the battlefield will be good. Okay, there's the Soaring Thought Thief. And we're actually going to see the Scry 2 here from Omen of the Sea. Not the mode that we're used to. He finds Glimpse of Freedom and figures, hey, with this much mana, I can wipe out a good chunk of my graveyard and it won't cost me that much. Okay, first things first, Glass Casket. You got to deal with that Duress. And Li Shitian says, all right, let's fight. I'm going to negate here. But there's going to be a neutralized targeting the negate. Can Li continue to fight?
Well, we got to drown.
He does. And it really depends how many cards are in the yard here for Kvartek, because that glimpse of freedom is just looming. Remember the same play that we saw Reid Duke make against Huey Jensen? Similar plays can be made here if Kvartek can get his graveyard down below 3, then he can really get Li Shitian here, because the worst part about this interaction is that the Drown in the Lock is on the stack already. Like, Li will have used it and then it will have done nothing, let alone having bricked it in his hand.
Yep.
I mean, it's brutal when this goes.
That's why you're starting. Okay, well, here we go.
So let's see, because it depends on how many cards are in Kvartek's yard here. If he can get through Glimpse of Freedom enough to do it, it looks like no. He's just going to allow that to happen. And then the negate does resolve and counter the Glass Casket. That means that Duress is still on the battlefield here. This could be a huge source of advantage for Li Shitian over the next turn or two.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's Duress can generate card advantage in a way that very few other cards can over the course of a couple of turns and just bury the opponent. Soaring Thought Thief, not a bad place to start.
Yeah, he got one last turn off of the Duress, and now he's got one this turn as well. And this is really going to make life difficult here for Kvartek, even trying to fight with that Glimpse of Freedom. It's going to be a lot of cards going to the graveyard here. There's a Merfolk Windrobber, your favorite.
Yeah, my invitational
loves that
card.
One. Yeah,
my
he's got a binder full of those at home. He's got some misprint Merfolk Windrobbers, artist proof. Sed's got it all.
See, okay, so now we got so many cards. Okay, so there's just a lot of cards in the graveyard. Okay.
What I'm really trying to do, Sed, is if we ever get to do live events again, I'm trying to get people to have you sign their Merfolk.
I know.
Because I've been on the bad end of that. I know what it's like.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this, and I gotta tell you, I don't like it.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
Though by the time we're actually in an event, Merfolk Windrobber will probably be a distant memory. But you know what? I got to keep my skills sharp.
Rotated by then.
I gotta keep my skills sharp. Wow, Li Shitian, I got to say, very impressive. Chris has been able to do pretty much what he wanted. He's been able to protect key spells with counters. Miria's Call resolved. Yorion resolved with a few juicy targets on the battlefield. There's a Dream Trawler sitting in hand here for Kvartek. But I got to say, it kind of looks like Li Shitian's still in an okay position, even given all of those cards having made it.
Here come the beatdowns. Do a little more glimpsing, see what we can find. I gotta tell you, as someone who's a big Think Twice fan, Glimpse of Freedom, even though I'm not someone who plays a lot of blue cards, this is my jam.
Mm-hmm.
Just working hard for a card. I like it. I like it.
This is some good old-fashioned combat here, too. Although I have to say, this Glimpse just doing absurd work. Now shrinking down Soaring Thought Thief so that these blocks look terrible.
Yep. Who knew? Who knew that the escape mechanic, which we all know because of Uro and Kroxa, but now we're getting into this weird, yes, shrink your creatures pre-combat. Your Drown in the Locks don't work the way you think they do when you cast them. We are just into the micro of this new standard format, and I am loving it.
And the timing is so brutal as well, because the blocks have already been made. So, he loses a Soaring Thought Thief. Normally, you could sacrifice that Windrobber. It's the only good thing about the card, but now Lee can't sacrifice it because those cards are gone from the yard. And then we've seen the absolute devastation that it pulls on Drown in the Loch, as Riley puts it. Yeah. And so, really just savaging here. And the cool part about it is Chris gets to do this and then he's like, draw a card. It's like, gets to just peel off of it too.
I'll take another one if you don't mind.
The one stop sign that this does have, though, is if Lee can actually generate enough pure mill, if he can get the 80 cards into the graveyard, Chris can exile as many of them as he wants, as long as there's none left.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? 80 cards is a lot to work through with how this game is shaping up. I mean, looking at Kvartek's deck, he just actually scrolled over the top of his deck as he looks like he's going to exile 5 more cards for this escape. He's got 40 cards left, so there's a
got a limited deck sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that is enough. Like, those cards can actually go away. It can happen. Usually, I think that's what the Ruin Crab, really helps turbo that out. But I don't think Lee's playing it. Yeah. Oh, he is. Or he was. I don't know if he's got him post-board. This has been a pretty long game. We haven't seen one from him. He may have sideboarded them out. But he is actually playing 4 in the main.
Yep. And those Wind Robbers, they did not have the opportunity to do what they want to do, which is block and sack, because of the Glimpse of Freedom.
I know. No wonder you don't like Wind Robber. It's like
it's just
completely unplayable in the state that it's in.
I can be a hater at times. I mean, it's so low power.
It really is. Boy,
look at the
especially
cards that are available in 2020 Magic, and we're doing this. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It is a tough one. By the way, these Maze Mind tomes have a lot riding on them. Li Shiqian needs to keep up here. The fact that Duress has survived on the battlefield this whole time has been really the only reason that he's been able to stay in this game at all. He's been casting a creature from his graveyard every single turn now, and it's been able to keep him alive, but barely. Oh, and look at this. Cling to Dust to finally get rid of that menace. He can finally take care of that card that has just been ruining his day. Glimpse of Freedom there for Lee.
He is back in the game.
Can't believe that a top deck Cling to Dust is what we're getting all excited about, but here we are.
So we're looking at Lee, who's at 8, but has a decent enough ability to continuously block these 4/4s. Oh, Essence Scatter and Wind Robber, showing it the proper amount of respect.
Look at
by
that.
By countering it. Yeah.
They're going to fight over it?
Well, this is happening on live televion. Need that Wind Robber.
I mean, he kind of does, right?
Yeah, yes.
Those are extremely threatening.
But for as much drawing of cards Kvartek was doing with that Glimpse, his hand is air, and he needs some real help here. Now, there's a little something.
That one will have to wait till next turn, or excuse me, till his draw step, which just happened. So that was an upkeep activation there of that Omen of the Sea. And now Shark Typhoon demands an answer. Interestingly, look at Lee's hand. He does have 2 copies of Thieves Guild Enforcer, and that other card is Deny the Divine out of the board for him. And boy, he's going to be happy that he has that. That counters enchantments. That is one of the few ways that a blue-black deck can really interact with enchantments these days, or ever. And he'll be happy he has it here, because it could be quite a blowout. I am curious, though, now that I say that, if Chris just wants to cycle the Shark Typhoon. Probably not, but he could make a lethal Shark.
I think he wants to cycle it.
You think so?
Yeah, I think there's probably some appeal of just like, I mean, not only do I think he wants to cycle it because of the biggest Shark, I think he wants to cycle it because he needs a new card.
He needs more stuff. Yeah, you're right.
A fresh one.
He's going to have to go for it. It's got to be tempting to try to just lean on it. It depends on how much pressure he feels like he's under at this point. He doesn't know about all of the Thieves Guild Enforcers in hand here. That could change things dramatically for Li Shiqian. Getting huge turn worth of mills is really a thing, although it looks like that's not the plan for him, because he's just going for a second Soaring Thought Thief, and if he was going to play the Enforcers, he would have played them first.
I'm a little surprised by that. What this means is that Lee is not fully on the mill plan yet.
Yeah,
because
maybe
if you're leading out with Thought Thief as opposed to Thieves Guild Enforcer, and then playing Thought Thief to get your mills, that clearly shows what you're thinking.
Yeah, so this is going to get awkward because it's an 8/8 shark that can get blocked. One of the angels can get blocked. Then there is a lethal angel left over, but Lee doesn't have quite enough blockers. But he actually has another copy of Cling to Dust. He could exile a creature to gain 3 life and avoid death.
Well, we're going to find out right now because he's being put to the test.
Continually put to the test is Li Shitian here, who's going to draw a card off of Maze Mind Tome. And by the way, boy, that cycling the shark really did help out. Look at that Dream Trawler into a second Emeria's Call here for Kvartek. He can breathe a little bit of relief. He just drew straight gasoline on the last 2 draw steps there.
Looks like Soaring Thought Thieves down. Okay, so now we got to be transitioning into Milieu. I just think you've got I think it's 3 Thieves Guild Enforcers right now. Maybe just 2.
1.
And then you've got cards you can get back from your graveyard. I just got to imagine this is where we're going.
Yeah, I think he has an Agadim's Awakening somewhere in there as well that he could use for one of those turns where you get back a 3rd Thieves Guild Enforcer, you get back a Soaring Thought Thief or whatever, and then maybe something else. And all of a sudden, you have, 6 triggers up or something like that.
Also, don't forget too is that when you get back, so the Soaring Thought Thief's blocked, right? So you get them back from the graveyard, and then you do your attack. If you get multiples back, then you do your attacks with Thieves Guild Enforcers, and those are also going to trigger the mills as well.
Right.
So
that could be the game-ending mill, perhaps.
All right, well, Dispute that is a good idea.
That worked out really well for Li Shitian. He's put himself in a position where he could be in a spot to get the mill job done here. Let's see what he does.
Again, not entirely sure exactly how many cards Kvartek has in his deck. We can't hover over it. We know that Lee has 16.
30.
It's 30? Well, 30 is a lot.
Needs to get 30, but he could cast 2 Thought Thieves, 2 Merfolk Wind Robbers, bare minimum. There's another thief. So he could go Enforcer, Thought Thief.
Oh, no, easy. You can only play 1 spell from Luris.
Oh, I thought that those were in his hand.
No, those are off to the side from.
Sorry.
Luris highlights everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I misunderstood. I missaw it. You're right.
Otherwise, we'd be just going off.
Yeah, well, I mean, even then, it's 30 cards. Like he has quite a bit of work to do. So yeah, that plan's not going to work. So what does he have to do now?
Well, I think Luris has got to get frisky. Yep, that's step 1. We need that. We need that life.
But the apparition is indestructible. Or no, it didn't. Yeah, it is. So yeah, this is just for the life gain, not where you want to be if you're Li Shitian. What is Kvartek going crazy about?
I think just thinking. I think he's upset because he could have blocked with the apparition because it is indestructible and he didn't.
I mean, who cares?
Oh, or Agadim's Awakening to get all this. Yes, that's a 3 for. Boy.
Chris missed something there, and I don't know what it is.
1, 2, 1.
But he is really upset.
Yeah.
Is it enough?
So what I think he's upset about is blocking Luris and letting it die because it comes back with Agadim's Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that's what I think he's upset about.
I think you're right, Sid.
Are we actually getting him?
I still see a card there.
I think there's 6.
Wow.
Let's see. 3
but
blocks.
I think your read is exactly right, Cedric. I think it was because he meant that was going to be the only 3-drop that could come back anyway.
And so what's interesting now is Li Shitian has 3 blockers in the air to 5 attackers. So Lee needs a spell. He needs his Heartless Act to resolve. And I think it's going to get disputed. So maybe he should have Heartless Acted on his own turn.
Wow. Is he waiting too long here? Now he will have the Wind Robbers active this time. So he could find another removal spell before damage.
Yeah.
But it looks like he's going to need to. Because he is facing lethal right now. And if this Heartless Act gets Mystical disputed, he's
Kvartek's
dead.
gonna win. So I guess I'm a little surprised he didn't.
Oh,
Heartless Act
hold on. Maze Mind
Go
Tome's
ahead.
on 3.
Okay, gotcha.
Maze Mind Tome's on 3, so he's actually at
He's at 11 then.
11 life instead of 7.
So
as
long
long
as
as
he's
blocked the
going to see
shark.
that. Yep.
Woo!
Wow.
This is so
sick.
close.
This is sick.
Incredible. And it looks like Li Shijian will survive the
Oh
turn
my god.
and win the match 2-0 over Chris Kvartek. You saw the agony on his face when he made that block. He's really frustrated with himself. And man, that was super, super close.